Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today I want to talk about something a little bit different and talk about something that has been bothering me lately, and that is just how video game movies are usually bad and never get treated with the respect that they deserved. So let's get into it. There are three movies that I'm going to use as an example, and as I think video game movies have evolved a little from what they used to be in the 90s and early 2000s, I'm going for more modern examples that fail in different ways. Even if some of these have developed some success and have sequels either released or likely on the way. The first film will be the new Uncharted movie with Tom Holland. The next is Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, and the last will be the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie. The thing that Uncharted fails in as a film is that it is so focused on setting up a universe and making as much money as possible off the Uncharted franchise that it forgets to make a quality film first. The more you look at these things, the more scummy this project feels. I mean, firstly, they cast Tom Holland as Nathan Drake, which if you've played the games, you know that doesn't really fit. It has been pretty clear from the jump that he was only cast because of how popular he is as an actor right now, because of Spider-Man, and he is young, so you can build future movies off it. The same can be said for Mark Wahlberg, which is just an abhorrent casting choice. But once again, it feels as if they can have future movies and they don't need to worry about them getting too old for their roles.
Hold on, old fellow. I'm getting you.
Now, was this film successful in terms of its box office figures? Sure, but to me, box office figures do not reflect the quality of a film at all. There are plenty of films that make very little money and come out as a box office bomb, but they're still excellent movies. To me, if this didn't have the Uncharted name attached to it, this probably would have made half of what it did. Personally, I only watched it because I love the Uncharted games so much and I was hoping that this would be a great adaptation. Seeing as the games already have a cinematic quality to them, I thought that this would be a layup. However, they just wanted to milk fans for all they're worth, and to me, this is still a very average product and it's very forgettable.
The only problem is, I can't remember what I've forgotten.
I mean, seriously, let me know if you disagree in the comments below, but is anyone really interested in watching this movie again? If you're bored, would you go back to the Uncharted movie and see it again? Personally, once is enough for me. In a review, this movie is a 1 out of 5 because of how badly they adapted the games, and it's so apparent to me that they weren't really thinking about how great these games are and putting a spin on them that both casual audiences and die-hard game fans can enjoy. What makes this even worse is that there is a really decent version of an Uncharted live-action adaptation out there. This is the short film starring Nathan Fillion as Drake and Stephen Lang as Sully. I'll link it down below because I think this is well worth watching and it pays homage to the games really nicely and feels extremely entertaining. What makes Uncharted special is in this. It feels low budget as it is a fan film, but if Sony had decided to give this team the bigger budget to make a full feature-length film, it would have been so much better than the version with Tom Holland. However, as Nathan Fillion and Stephen Lang are actually appropriate ages to play these characters, that doesn't really work because they are older and you can't really build a universe with 10 films off that. Then we have Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, which to me is an example of a video game movie that actually wants to do right by the games and tries to adapt it one-to-one, and it just doesn't have the talent to make this a good film overall. In a review, this is a 2 out of 5 film as it looks rough, but I loved how the film actually tries to make this feel like a Resident Evil film through its production design. The iconic police station actually looks fairly close, and as someone who has played Resident Evil 2, the story feels fairly close to that of the game. However, they decided to mash together the storylines of both Resident Evil 1 and 2, and the film feels like a mess because of it, as when one storyline seems to be progressing nicely, it grinds to a halt as it cuts to the story that the first Resident Evil had.
It's a mess, big mess.
The writing is also quite bad for this film, where it feels very amateurish, and the performances don't help either. The biggest example of this is with Leon, who is the most titular character in the whole Resident Evil franchise. For some reason, they decided to write him like the biggest idiot on the planet so they could have some comedy to draw in more people and create larger audiences. Another thing that is very bad is the use of the CGI, which is probably the worst I have seen in about 20 years. It is just ridiculously bad, and it makes me wonder why they would even use it. The budget for this clearly wasn't high enough to have effective CGI, so why even bother? Obviously, with some extremely weak marketing and a film that just doesn't have the talent to perfectly execute the combination of horror and goofiness that the games had, this wasn't exactly a hit at the box office. Unfortunately, even though a lot of the beats are still there from these excellent games, they don't have the heart and soul that made these games great, and instead it feels like an average cover version. Because of that, I can't help but feel as if this was another movie looking to make a quick buck off a video game IP. The first Sonic the Hedgehog movie might be the most successful video game adaptation out there, and a lot of people would argue that this is actually a good movie. Even though this is a little higher in quality compared to the first two films I talked about, this is still average at best in my opinion. Now, I haven't got around to seeing Sonic 2, and it might be even better, but from what I have seen from this one, I don't really have the highest of hopes. I honestly think the success of this movie largely comes from the controversy that came before this with how they originally designed Sonic. It was such a travesty that they decided to change it to something a lot better. While I have to commend them for putting in the effort to do right by the fans, they still created that design, and the movie still feels like a very cookie-cutter kids movie. Sure, Jim Carrey is great, and Sonic is a lot more like his game counterpart, which largely helped this be very successful, but the story just can't do anything special because the story in the games isn't that great either. I think that's a lot of the problem with many video game adaptations. They'll usually adapt an iconic video game that was fun to play, but doesn't really have a story. Sonic is definitely one of those games, and the older Sonic games are fun, but you can't play a movie like a video game, so when you're adapting these into a story, coming up with something extremely generic is actually an achievement. If I were to review the first Sonic, it would be a 2.5 out of 5. And it still really doesn't hit that level of greatness that I think fans of many video games would like to see. While these films have varying levels of success and take different approaches to adapting these games into films, I've yet to see a video game movie that is actually considered a great film that would be on people's top 10 lists. At best, we've gotten cheap entertainment that is mostly forgettable to egregiously bad that honestly hurt the reputation of these video games.
Ouch.
Even if the outlook on video games has changed over the years, I'm still far from happy with how these producers treat these IPs. You can see the lack of respect on the screen. I haven't seen the Halo show, but seeing comments that the showrunners didn't even bother to try the games is a travesty to me when you're trying to adapt something into a movie.
What are you doing? Just hear me out.
Video game movies are kind of stuck in that same purgatory that comic book films were during the 90s and the early 2000s. I want video games to evolve like comic book movies have, and I think both these types of films have had similar impressions to producers. The difference is we started to get great comic book movies that could be appreciated by everyone. Video game movies also seem to be in a place where they're only trying to do a one-to-one adaptation that doesn't really work as it isn't as good as the game, or they're trying to deviate extremely far from the source material that insults people that love these games. I think either way it doesn't work. Some of the best adaptations take the best things from the source material, and a talented director would put their own spin on things to make it great. Films like The Dark Knight, Logan, or Joker have all done this and have done it so well that they have seen critical acclaim, killed it at the box office, and have been nominated for Academy Awards. What I wish some of these producers would consider would be to go down this route and treat these video games with the respect that a book adaptation would have. We all saw Dune last year, where you can feel that the people involved really care about this source material and want to tell the story properly. How great would it be if the Uncharted movie was treated with the same respect? I think that firstly, it would have made a lot more money because it would have been a better product. But instead, these movies are pumped out with the worst elements of blockbuster filmmaking to make a quick buck, and us, the audience, see a worse product because of it. Anyway, those are my general thoughts on the state of video game movies. Tell me what you think down below. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.